Get her in here already. We're not waiting all night. My eldest sister, Cassandra, hissed. Her voice carried through the grand hall, echoing off the chandeliers that sparkled like frozen stars. I stood at the edge of the entrance, my hands trembling against the delicate fabric of my dress. It wasn't designer like the others. In fact, it wasn't even new. It was a hand-me-down, altered to fit me as best as it could, but the seams dug into my skin, a reminder of how out of place I truly was. Olivia! Cassandra's sharp call struck like a whip. Don't embarrass us. Get in here now. I took a shaky step forward, clutching the small purse that contained my only luxury, a necklace my late adoptive mother had given me. The room was packed with people in tailored suits and couture gowns, every face gleaming with privilege and entitlement. As I entered, whispers filled the air. I felt their stares like daggers. Who let her in here looking like that? Someone murmured. She's the adopted one, right? Doesn't look like she belongs in this family, another scoffed. Cassandra approached me, her smile as sharp as a blade. Finally decided to join us. Dear sister, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. How kind of you to grace us with your presence. Before I could respond, she grabbed my arm and led me to the center of the room. Everyone, this is Olivia, our special sister, she said, her tone dripping with mockery. My brother, Adrian, smirked as he handed me a glass of champagne. Try not to spill it on yourself, Liv. This dress is probably worth more than your entire wardrobe. Laughter erupted around me. My cheeks burned, but I refused to let them see me cry. I glanced around, searching for an escape route, but the crowd had closed in, their eyes gleaming with amusement. Speech, someone shouted. Cassandra grinned wickedly. Yes, Olivia, say a few words. After all, this is your first time at a real party, isn't it? I swallowed hard. My heart pounded in my chest, and my throat tightened. I wanted to scream, to run, but their eyes were glued to me, waiting for me to falter. Suddenly, a deep voice cut through the noise. I think that's enough. The room fell silent. A man stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. He was tall and impeccably dressed, his dark suit tailored to perfection. His sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes gave him an air of authority, but it was his aura, confident and unshakable, that silenced the room. Humiliating someone isn't entertaining, he said, his voice steady but laced with warning. He looked at Cassandra and Adrian, his gaze cold. It's cruel. Cassandra's smile faltered. And who exactly are you to interrupt our party? She snapped, trying to maintain her composure. He took a step closer, towering over her. Alexander West. Perhaps you've heard of me. The name sent a ripple through the crowd. Alexander West, the self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. Everyone in the room knew his name, and judging by the way Cassandra paled, she did too. Alexander turned to me, his expression softening. You don't deserve this, he said gently. None of it. I blinked, unsure if I had heard him correctly. His gaze held mine, steady and unwavering. For the first time that night, I felt seen, not as an outsider, but as a person. Cassandra cleared her throat, her tone syrupy sweet. Mr. West, this is just a little family fun. You know how siblings can be. Alexander's jaw tightened. This isn't fun. It's degrading. He extended a hand toward me. Come with me. You don't need to stay here. My breath hitched. I hesitated, glancing at Cassandra and Adrian. Their faces were a mix of shock and fury. Go on, Olivia, Alexander urged. You deserve better. With a trembling hand, I took his. As we walked out of the grand hall, I felt the weight of their stares behind me. Cassandra's voice rang out, sharp and venomous. Don't think this changes anything, Olivia. You're still nothing without us. I stopped, turning to face her. For the first time, I felt a spark of courage. I'd rather be nothing than be like you. Her jaw dropped, and the room erupted in murmurs. But I didn't wait to see her reaction. I turned back to Alexander, who gave me a small, approving nod. Once we were outside, the cool night air hit me like a bomb. I took a deep breath, the tension slowly leaving my body. Alexander looked at me, his expression unreadable. You deserve a life where you're respected, Olivia. And if you're willing to trust me, I can help you build it. We stood under the glow of the city lights, the faint hum of traffic in the distance. I was still trembling, the events of the evening replaying in my mind like a nightmare. Alexander turned to face me, his gaze steady but filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time, kindness. You're probably wondering why I stepped in, he said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of urgency in his tone. I nodded, unsure of how to respond. Why would someone like you care about what happened back there? He smiled faintly, his hands slipping into his pockets. Because I've been there. Maybe not the same exact situation, but I know what it feels like to be underestimated. To be treated as though you're less than everyone else in the room. His words hit me harder than I expected. I looked down, clutching my purse tightly. I don't even know what to do now, I admitted. I have nothing. That's where you're wrong, Alexander said firmly. You have yourself. And if you're willing to trust me, I can help you turn that nothing into everything. I stared at him, unsure of what he meant. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. He shrugged. Maybe I see potential in you. Or maybe I just hate bullies. Either way, I'm offering you a chance to change your life. As we walked toward his car, a sleek black Rolls-Royce, I hesitated. Every instinct told me to be cautious, to question why a man like him would take an interest in someone like me. But something about Alexander felt genuine. Where are we going? I asked as he opened the door for me. To a place where you can breathe, he said simply. I slid into the car, my heart pounding. The interior smelled of leather and a faint, expensive cologne. It was worlds away from the life I'd known. A life filled with second-hand belongings and constant reminders of my place in the family hierarchy. The ride was silent, but not uncomfortable. Alexander seemed to sense my unease and didn't push me to talk. Instead, he focused on the road, his hands steady on the wheel. When we arrived at a high-rise building in the heart of the city, my breath caught. The building was stunning, its glass facade reflecting the night sky. This is my home, Alexander said, leading me inside. And for now, it can be yours too. The penthouse was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, and the decor was modern yet inviting. It felt surreal, stepping into a space so luxurious after spending my life in a cramped, outdated house filled with resentment. You can stay here for as long as you need, Alexander said, gesturing toward a guest room. There's no rush to figure everything out. Take your time. I turned to him, my voice trembling. Why are you doing this? What's in it for you? He paused, his expression softening. Sometimes helping someone else is its own reward. I don't expect anything in return, Olivia, but I do hope you'll find the strength to stand on your own. That night, as I lay in the plush bed of the guest room, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought about my siblings, the cruel words they'd thrown at me, and the way Cassandra's laughter had echoed in my ears. But for the first time, those memories didn't crush me. Instead, they fueled something inside me, a desire to prove them wrong. I got up and walked to the mirror. For years, I'd avoided looking at my reflection, afraid of seeing the version of myself they wanted me to believe in, insignificant, unwanted. But now, staring back at my own face, I saw something different. Tomorrow, I whispered to myself, I start over. Over breakfast the next morning, Alexander placed a file on the table in front of me. I took the liberty of drafting a plan for you, he said. I blinked, surprised. A plan? He nodded. Education, career opportunities, personal growth. If you're going to rebuild your life, you'll need a foundation. And I'll help you every step of the way. Tears welled in my eyes as I opened the file. It was more than just a plan, it was hope laid out in black and white. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Alexander helped me enroll in a prestigious business program, something I never thought I'd have access to. He introduced me to mentors, gave me books to read, and pushed me to believe in myself. But it wasn't easy. There were nights when I wanted to give up, when the weight of my past felt too heavy to bear. And yet, every time I faltered, Alexander was there, reminding me of my potential. "You're stronger than you think, Olivia," he'd say. "Don't let them win." News of my transformation eventually reached my siblings. Cassandra called me one evening, her tone dripping with fake concern. "Olivia, darling, what's this I hear about you running around with Alexander West? Are you trying to ruin our family's reputation?" I clenched my jaw, my grip on the phone tightening. "The only thing ruining this family is you." Her laughter was cold and bitter. "Don't get too comfortable, Olivia. You're still nothing more than the charity case Mom and Dad brought home. And no billionaire can change that." Cassandra's venomous words lingered in my mind for days, but I refused to let them derail my progress. Alexander noticed my unease and asked what had happened. Reluctantly, I told him about the call. "She's trying to manipulate you," he said, his voice firm. "Don't give her that power." "I won't," I replied, though deep down, I knew Cassandra wouldn't stop there. She thrived on control, and my newfound independence was a threat to her carefully crafted world. It wasn't long before her next move came. A tabloid article appeared, painting me as a gold digger who had latched onto Alexander for his wealth. The headline read, "From Rags to Riches. The Adopted Sister's Social Climb." Alexander was livid. "This is slander," he said, pacing his office. "I'll have my legal team handle it," but I stopped him. "No," I said, my voice steady. "Let them say what they want. I'll prove them wrong with actions, not words." I threw myself into my studies and the projects Alexander had lined up for me. One of them involved working with a nonprofit organization that supported underprivileged youth. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was making a difference. Not just for myself but for others who had been overlooked and underestimated. One evening, Alexander invited me to a charity gala. "It's a good networking opportunity," he said, "and a chance to show your siblings what you've become." I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to face them. But then I remembered Cassandra's mocking laughter and Adrian's smug smirk. "I'll go," I said, "and I won't let them intimidate me." The night of the gala, I wore a gown Alexander had gifted me. A stunning emerald dress that hugged my figure and shimmered under the lights. As I walked into the grand hall, heads turned, and for the first time it wasn't out of pity or scorn. It was admiration. Cassandra and Adrian were there, of course, their expressions shifting from surprise to barely concealed irritation when they saw me. Cassandra approached, her smile forced. "Olivia, what a transformation. I almost didn't recognize you." "Funny," I said, matching her tone. "I could say the same about you. You seem smaller than I remember." Her eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Alexander appeared at my side. "Olivia," he said warmly, ignoring Cassandra entirely. "The director of the foundation wants to meet you. Shall we?" As we walked away, I caught the look of fury on Cassandra's face. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. The gala was a turning point for me. It wasn't just about showing my siblings that I was no longer the meek, overlooked girl they could ridicule. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of standing tall in a room full of people who had once looked down on me. After the event, Alexander and I sat in his car, watching the city lights. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you," I said, my voice soft. "I couldn't have done it without your help." He shook his head. "You've always had it in you, Olivia. You just needed someone to remind you." Cassandra and Adrian weren't done with their schemes. They began spreading rumors in social circles, trying to discredit me. Adrian even attempted to sabotage one of my nonprofit projects by falsely accusing the organization of financial misconduct. But Alexander's team was always one step ahead. The accusations were disproven quickly, and Adrian's involvement was exposed. The backlash was swift, and for the first time, my siblings were on the defensive. "They're desperate," Alexander said when I told him about the incident. "They see you succeeding, and it terrifies them." Amid the chaos, I discovered something shocking. While going through some old family documents, I found a letter written by my adoptive mother. It revealed a secret she had kept hidden. My biological parents had left me a substantial inheritance, but Cassandra and Adrian had conspired to keep it from me. The realization hit me like a freight train. My siblings hadn't just humiliated me, they had stolen from me. I can't let them get away with this, I told Alexander, my voice shaking with anger. You won't, he said, but you need to approach this carefully. Let's gather all the evidence first. With Alexander's help, I hired a lawyer and began building my case. The process was grueling, but I was fueled by a sense of determination I hadn't felt before. For years, I had been their scapegoat, their punching bag. Not anymore. When Cassandra and Adrian were served with legal papers, they were furious. Cassandra called me, her voice dripping with contempt. You're really going to drag our family name through the mud over this? Our family name? I shot back. You mean the one you've been using to hide your lies? I'm done letting you control me, Cassandra. The courtroom became a battleground, with my siblings fighting tooth and nail to deny their wrongdoing. But the evidence was undeniable. The stolen inheritance, the fraudulent claims, they had left a paper trail that even their expensive lawyers couldn't cover up. When the verdict came, it was a victory not just for me but for the truth. The court ordered them to return what was rightfully mine, along with damages for their deceit. The judgment sent shockwaves through our social circle. Cassandra and Adrian were ostracized, their reputations in tatters. For once, they were the ones being whispered about, the ones facing humiliation. But I didn't revel in their downfall. Instead, I focused on the future, on building a life that was truly my own. With the court battle behind me, I felt a sense of liberation I'd never known before. For years, I had been defined by my siblings' cruelty and the shadows they cast over my life. Now I was free to define myself. Alexander noticed the change in me. You're different, he said one afternoon as we reviewed plans for a new initiative I was spearheading. Stronger. I feel stronger, I admitted. For the first time, I'm not looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next attack will come. It's a good feeling. He smiled, nodding. It suits you. With my inheritance restored, I had the financial freedom to pursue projects I was passionate about. I expanded my work with the nonprofit, creating programs that provided education and resources for underprivileged children. Every success felt like a small victory over the voices in my past that had told me I wasn't good enough. At one event, a young girl approached me. She was shy, her hands clutching a worn book. Miss Olivia, thank you for helping us, she said. I want to be like you when I grow up. Her words brought tears to my eyes. You already have everything you need to succeed, I told her. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Just as my life began to settle into a new rhythm, Cassandra returned, this time with a different approach. She appeared at one of my events, her demeanor subdued. Olivia, she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Can we talk? I wanted to turn her away, but something in her eyes stopped me. Reluctantly, I agreed. I know I've hurt you, she began, her gaze fixed on the floor, and I can't undo what I've done. But I'm sorry. The words felt foreign coming from her, and I struggled to believe them. Why now? I asked. What do you really want? She hesitated, then sighed. I've lost everything, Olivia. The friends, the reputation, the money, it's all gone. And for what? My pride? My ego? I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. Cassandra's apology stirred something unexpected in me. Compassion. I had spent so long resenting her, hating her for the pain she caused. But seeing her now, broken and vulnerable, I realized that holding on to that anger wouldn't change the past. I can't forget what you did, I said carefully, but I can forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Olivia. That's more than I deserve. While Cassandra sought redemption, Adrian chose a different path. He continued to lash out, blaming me for his downfall. He attempted to discredit my nonprofit, spreading lies and fabricating stories to undermine my credibility. But his efforts backfired. Alexander's team uncovered evidence of his ongoing schemes, and the media exposed him for the fraud he was. The fallout was devastating, leaving Adrian with no allies and no resources. You've always been your own worst enemy, I told him during our final confrontation. I hope someday you'll realize that, as my siblings faded into the background, my focus shifted entirely to the life I was building. My work expanded, and I became a voice for those who had been silenced, just as I once was. Alexander remained by my side, a constant source of support and encouragement. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of his penthouse, he turned to me with a rare vulnerability in his eyes. You've come so far, Olivia. I hope you see that. I do, I said, smiling. And I couldn't have done it without you. He shook his head. You did it all on your own. I just gave you the tools. Over time, my relationship with Alexander deepened. What began as mentorship evolved into something more, something neither of us had anticipated. He confessed his feelings one quiet evening, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I didn't plan for this, he said, taking my hand, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. I smiled, my heart full. I feel the same way. Years later, I found myself standing on a stage, accepting an award for my work in philanthropy. As I looked out at the audience, I saw Alexander, Cassandra, and even Adrian. Cassandra gave me a small, supportive nod, while Adrian avoided my gaze. In that moment, I realized how far I had come. The girl who had once been ridiculed and dismissed was now a woman standing tall, her voice heard and respected. My journey had been one of pain, struggle, and growth, but in the end, it was worth it. I had turned my pain into purpose, my wounds into wisdom, and as I looked to the future, I knew that I was no longer defined by my past. I was free,